In this lesson, we're going to be talking about deleted files. Now, the thing about deleted files is we call them deleted, but even though they're deleted doesn't necessarily mean that they're not on the hard drive. And there's a couple of reasons for this. The first thing is that just because I delete something doesn't mean that it immediately gets wiped off the disk. There's actually an interim state that it goes to, and you're probably all familiar with it, but let me just show you here. So I'm going to delete this directory, and then what I can do is I can go over here to the recycle bin, and here's the directory that I just deleted. So there's a folder sitting here in the recycle bin that I deleted, and so even though I clicked delete on the file, or selected delete, what it did was it moved it over to the recycle bin, and there's a reason for that, and that's because a lot of times people accidentally delete things and they want to restore them later. So this is a pretty good, you changed your mind and you want to be able to go back and get it. So I could do this, I could select restore and it would come back. In this case though, what I want to do is I want to empty the recycle bin. So I'm going to empty the recycle bin, and you know, most of the operating systems with graphical interfaces, whether it's Mac OS or whether it's Windows or even Linux, they have this concept of a recycle bin or a trash can or a trash bin or something along those lines where files get moved to temporarily rather than just flat out deleting them from the hard drive. Now, the thing about it is that even though we've emptied the recycle bin, doesn't mean that the files are actually gone. And I'm going to bring up a utility here called undelete plus, and I'm just going to show you that what we can do, we can find these files even though they were in the recycle bin and they were removed from the recycle bin, meaning they should have been deleted. The reason for that is because rather than wiping the sectors on the hard drive where they were located, what we've done is just really unlink them from the file tables. So the files are still sitting out there on the drive, and if you've got a utility, you could actually go and find them and maybe be able to restore them. So actually what we've got here is we've got several files that this particular utility was able to find, and it even does a job of categorizing them for you so you can find particular ones. And so there's all of these files, and we could actually recover them if you had, for example, this particular utility and a licensed copy of it. You'd be able to restore those files even though they've quote-unquote been deleted. So that's on the Windows side, and there are some ways that you can do it on the Linux side as well, although they are a little less reliable for reasons that are specific to the file systems that exist under Linux. So I've actually got some drives that are sitting here, and I've really got a USB stick that you can see sitting at the bottom. I'm going to CD into that USB stick, and I've got a bunch of data that's sitting out there. If I actually take a look at it in a particular way, I can see the inode on the left-hand side that's associated with a particular file. So once I've got the inode, and the inode is really just a data section that sits on the hard drive describing a file and where it actually can be found on the drive. So what I can do is use a utility called debugfs, and I'm going to enter into the device that this USB stick happens to be. And what I can do is a log dump, and I want to look at the inode 12, which corresponds to a file called md5.dd. Now, you can see in this output that there's blocks fields, and the blocks would indicate where the data actually sits on the hard drive. So these blocks entries are all blank at this particular time. I'm not seeing any blocks where this is actually stored. So it's going to be a little hard to bring this file back if I were to delete it, because I don't see the blocks on the drive where the data is actually stored. And there should be some fields here where it points to places on the drive where it's actually stored. So, as I said, sometimes it's a little difficult to bring these files back because you need to know where the data actually is on the hard drive in order to be able to pull it back. Now, there are some utilities like, for example, ext undelete, and you could try that against a Linux file system, but again, sometimes it will work and sometimes it won't work, and some of it has to do with whether you've got an ext2 or an ext3 file system, or an ext3 versus an ext4. And the way that the ext3 file systems work is they actually zero out sections of the inodes when files are deleted, and so it makes it harder to go actually pull that data back because it's been zeroed out. So undelete doesn't always work under Linux systems, although if you go searching around, you may find some basically cookbook recipes for if you do this and this and this, you'll be able to get your file back. Like I said, sometimes that'll work and sometimes that won't work. What does work under Linux is if you've got a recycle bin with your GUI and somebody hasn't emptied the recycle bin, you can certainly go into the recycle bin and find files there. As I said earlier, same thing is true with Windows, with Mac, with other Unix-like operating systems, with a desktop environment that includes a recycle bin or a trash bin. If somebody hasn't emptied that, those deleted files will be there to be found.